The story starts with a fragile young woman named Lee Holloway, who shares the end of her time in a mental institution. She explains that she was released on the day of her sister's wedding. Her doctor, Dr. Twarden, gives her a parting offer, telling her she can call anytime for help. However, Lee confesses she hesitates to leave the simplicity of her life inside. Once home, she faces a chaotic welcome party filled with screaming relatives. Amid the noise, she sees a man named Peter, who jokes about her nearly forgetting him. When he asks if she is happy to be home, Lee honestly replies that she doesn't know. As the atmosphere becomes awkward with a DJ playing music for the Lovebirds, Lee's father, Bert, tells her she looks beautiful. The tension of reintegration is immediate. As Bert hugs her and whispers how much they missed her, he sits down, feeling unwell from drinking. Lee notices he hasn't stopped drinking too much, which angers her. In a rush, she goes to her room, opens an old box, and starts to hurt herself. She stops soon after, though, when things calm down. Later, family dysfunction explodes. Lee's mother, Joan, fiercely argues with Bert, accusing him of losing his job while drunk. As her father retreats into her room, Lee tests her pain threshold with hot tea. To rejoin society, Lee signs up for a typing class. The instructor insists they avoid looking at the keys and must make their fingers bounce. During practice, Lee types about flowers giving up in despair. Later, her mother praises her for getting out more, but Lee's thoughts reveal her dark past. She remembers her accident in the kitchen when her mother wasn't watching. She slipped and cut too deep, a habit she has kept since 7th grade. At home, her mother gathers all sharp objects to prevent her from hurting herself. Lee attempts to throw away her old habit but feels regret. While looking in the trash, she sees an ad for a secretarial position, takes it home, and circles it. Determined to find work, she practices her introduction in the mirror, telling herself she is a leader. At the municipal tax office, she enters a messy room full of papers and goes straight to the interview. Mr. Gray, who seems intense and unusual, looks at a picture of his wife while trying to compose himself. As Lee stands there, confused and wanting to leave, he tells her to stay. Mr. Gray asks if she is the lawyer. When she clarifies that she is there for the secretary position, he begins his invasive questioning. He asks if she is pregnant or plans to become pregnant. He questions where she lives, whether it's an apartment or house, and if she lives alone. She explains she lives with her parents, while her sister stays in the pool house. When he asks if she is married, she denies it, and when he inquires about any award she has won, she mentions her typing award. Gray gasps at her high scores and abruptly tells her to get him a cup of coffee with sugar. Lee struggles to make the coffee, even spilling it on herself. Gray returns and questions whether she really wants to be a secretary. He tells her she is overqualified and would find the job boring. Lee famously replies, "I want to be bored." Gray mentions he has a paralegal and only needs a typist who is punctual, emphasizing that they use typewriters, not computers. He observes that she is closed up tight like a wall. Just then, the phone rings. He ominously instructs her, "I'm not here," and complains that the coffee has too much sugar. Lee gets the job and tells her mother. The office environment is strange. Gray assigns her many tasks, even asking her to retrieve a file he threw away, making her dislike the job. Still, Lee perseveres. She works hard, serving him coffee and donuts, even though he tosses them away. She organizes his papers and sets a mousetrap as he reviews her work. Soon, the phone rings, and she rushes to answer it just as someone arrives, calling for Edward. Lee finds him hiding and tells the caller he is unavailable. Moments later, Bert calls, drunk again, asking where she is. Lee puts him on hold to take a message from the caller, who angrily tells Gray to sign a settlement. When Lee returns to her father's line, he has already hung up. Back in her office, she begins to harm herself again, while Gray watches her in horror from the corner. Lee tries to maintain a normal social life. She goes on a date with Peter, who discusses laundry habits, mentioning that compatibility in these habits is essential for a relationship. Peter admits he wants to marry and have kids. Lee then reveals her nervous breakdown, to which Peter replies he sort of had one too. The conversation turns strange when Lee expresses concern about Peter's tight underwear. She awkwardly mentions that tight underwear constricts his testicles and worries it could affect his ability to have children. During this, Mr. Gray walks into the laundromat and sees them kiss. Shocked, he rushes to his car and puts a red pencil next to it. Back at the office, the dynamic changes. Gray circles a typing error and confronts Lee with a letter, demanding she look at it. He points out 3 mistakes, one being a spelling error. Lee apologizes, but Gray is relentless, reminding her this is not the first time she has made mistakes and how it affects him with clients. He orders her to type it again, and when she brings it back, he circles another mistake and complains that she is wasting his time. Lee breaks down, sniffing and crying as she types another letter. The criticism grows more personal. Gray slams a book shut, saying Lee is a visual representation of his business. He harshly states, "The way you dress is disgusting," and criticizes her habits like toe-tapping and playing with her hair, telling her to wear a hairnet if she can't stop. He also mentions her constant sniffling. Lee stammers that she didn't realize, and Gray asks why her tongue moves when she types. Lee tries to remain calm, convincing herself that his suggestions are helpful because she wants to be the best secretary possible. Lee attends a dinner with Peter and his parents, Sylvia and Stuart. Sylvia offers homemade wine, but Lee declines. Sylvia says Peter talks about Lee constantly and claims he has found his soulmate. Peter confirms that he did say it. They discuss Peter's sister getting married in Vegas and his steady job at JCPenney, hinting at a potential double wedding. Overwhelmed by the pressure of normalcy, Lee simply mutters "Mom." The turning point in Lee and Gray's relationship comes through the intercom. Gray urgently calls her to the library. Lee sniffs a remedy to stop her sniffling. In the library, he orders her to answer the phone like she would for a client. Nervously, Lee responds, but her voice is shaky. Gray scolds her, saying she is a big girl with a tiny throat and needs to project her voice better. She corrects herself, speaking loudly, and feels proud when he claps for her effort. The atmosphere grows more intimate. Gray invites her over and asks if she has been on a date recently. When she responds yes, he asks if she had sex with Peter. Lee laughs nervously while Gray pushes further, asking if she is shy. Lee admits she is shy, and he encourages her to talk about her problems with him. Gray gives her hot chocolate and inquires why she cuts herself. Lee struggles to explain. He suggests that the pain inside needs to come out to prove she is present, and watching the wound heal can be comforting. Lee listens, then he commands something that changes everything: "You will never, ever cut yourself again." He asks if he has made that clear, asserting that it's in the past. Lee agrees, never again. He instructs her to leave work early and walk home for fresh air, asserting she is an adult and doesn't need her mother to pick her up. He tells her she needs relief and takes a picture of her. As Lee walks home through Hawkins Park, she reflects on how it feels like she has never walked alone before. She feels held by him during her walk, sensing an intimate connection growing with Mr. Gray. The next day, she stops carrying her cutting tools but makes another typo. Gray erupts with frustration, asking what is wrong with her and if typing is beyond her ability. When she apologizes, he yells, "Don't apologize to me. What goes on inside your head?" He calls her into his office with the letter. He tells her to put the letter on his desk and bend over to look directly at it. He commands her to get her face very close and to read it aloud. Lee feels confused, but complies, putting her elbows on the desk. As she reads, he slaps her, and she glances back at him, confused. He tells her to read it again. As she starts to read, he slaps her repeatedly. She struggles to continue reading, but he keeps slapping her until she finishes. Gray tells her to straighten up and type it again. Lee goes to the mirror and sees the damage. Shocked, she also feels some happiness. She types a new letter and returns to his office. He praises her, and she smiles. At home, she tells her mother that the lock can be removed from the cabinet and discards her old trauma. The discipline becomes a routine. Now, Gray is in full control. She will do whatever he says, including slapping her daily, putting a carrot in her mouth, and even controlling what she eats for dinner. She can't get over him and starts to please herself while thinking about him. She even makes a mistake on purpose to earn punishment, but he is on the phone and does not notice. He simply signs it and hands it to her while she waits for the slap that he denies her all day. At the swimming pool, Lee confesses to Peter that her boss asked if her hose was control top. Tension builds when Lee discovers her father is in the hospital, so she goes directly to Gray's house. She tries to connect with him. Approaching him, she stammers that she needed him. Gray coldly asks, "You need me for what?" Afraid, she backs off, claiming she just didn't want him to forget the lynch papers. Lee narrates that after this, Gray stopped the discipline, got rid of his red pens, and treated her like a regular secretary. She feels invisible. She tries to provoke him by commenting that his tie has golfers on it, implying he won't be golfing today. He simply responds, "Right," and she mutters, "Damn it." Exhausted, she buys flowers and a frame of herself and places it in his office. She even tries to slap herself, but it's not as satisfying as she hoped. The next day, she sees a worm and gets the idea to put it in his paper, which leads to her getting slapped. He ignores her and walks away. Desperate to feel something, she attempts to be intimate with Peter. She tells him not to be scared, though she is the one trembling. Yet he seems confused. She insists that the lights stay off and her clothes stay on. They lie together, but it's awkward and disconnected. The next day, Gray finds the worm. Frustrated, he circles it with a pen and calls her into his office while a client, Mr. Marvel, waits. He ignores the doorbell, unaware it's her boyfriend, and orders Lee to pull up her skirt while Peter searches for her. Lee tells Peter she can't come to dinner today. Gray repeats the command to pull up her skirt and orders her to remove her pantyhose and underwear. He states he won't fool around with her, then touches her intimately. After their encounter, Gray returns to cold professionalism. He orders her to complete forms and take her lunch break but wants her to bring him his sandwich. He requests the usual, no mayonnaise this time. Lee goes straight to the bathroom. She begins to moan and beg, using explicit language. Meanwhile, Gray feels disgusted, smashing frames and burning her photos, exclaiming in anger. Mr. Gray retreats to his office, listening to a tape about living joyfully while accepting all emotions, including pain. He buzzes Lee and asks for her typing scores. When she enters, he repeats the same questions from their first meeting. Are you pregnant? Do you plan on getting pregnant? Are you living in an apartment? Lee answers carefully. He then asks if she is married, and she says no. Finally, he questions whether she truly wants to be his secretary. Lee replies, "Yes, I do." Gray looks at her and says, "This isn't just about typos, tape, staples, and pencils, is it, Lee?" Lee denies it, saying, "No, sir," but Gray pushes back. He likes her but refuses to offer her the job. When she asks why, he says her behavior is quite poor. He tells her to gather her belongings. A desperate move to pause the game, but Gray shouts, "You're fired. Now, Lee, get out." He lists her failings to justify the firing. She got glue on the Ramsey papers, she kicks her shoes off so he can smell her feet, and she leaves eraser shavings everywhere. He accuses her of listening to music on her Walkman instead of working. Lee promises to stop, but Gray is firm. He confesses, "You have to go, or I won't stop." Lee pleads with him not to do this, saying, "I can't do this anymore. But I want to know you." Gray apologizes for what happened between them, calling it a big mistake and promising great references. He yells at her one last time, "Get out." Lee leaves, crying. Lee receives a severance check for $680, more than she was owed. She watches his office from across the street and sees he has hired a new girl and changed the locks. Trying to move on, she remembers her doctor's advice that every journey begins with a first step and goes out with new men. The results are awful. One man pinches her nipples before they even reach the car, another orders her to pee on his patio and calls her a masochist when she refuses, a third ties her to a gas stove and makes her throw tomatoes at him. Lee gives up and stays home, helping her father with his sobriety. Unexpectedly, Peter proposes in the basement of JCPenney. Lee says yes because she doesn't know what else to do. During a wedding dress fitting, Sylvia comments on Lee's weight, telling her to hold her breath. Sylvia gushes that Lee is too beautiful, but the compliment feels empty. Suddenly, Lee realizes she can't go through with it. She runs out. Lee runs straight to Gray's office. She buzzes in and tells him, "I have something to say to you. I love you." Gray tells her she shouldn't be there, but she repeats her feelings. Gray coldly says he doesn't believe her and that the matter was settled when she cashed the check. Lee insists, "I love you." Gray argues they can't do this all the time, asking, "Why not?" He then tests her resolve, commanding her to place both hands on the desk, palms down, and to keep her feet on the floor until he returns. Lee tells him, "I want to make love." He leaves her there. Lee remains still until midnight. Gray calls Peter's cell phone and informs him that she is at his office. He also calls the office cell phone. She tries to pick it up with her mouth, trying to stay still. Gray is astonished when he sees this. He tells Lee he cares for her too. Peter bursts in, confused and furious, asking what she is doing. She tells him to leave because he is trespassing. Gray describes Peter's presence as an unwarranted incursion into the sphere of another. Peter disregards the legal talk and asks Lee, "Are you doing something sexual right now? Does this look sexual to you?" He begs her to move her hands. Lee refuses, saying, "Because I don't want to." Peter tries to physically pull her from the chair, resulting in a struggle where they both grunt and fight. Finally, Lee looks at him and says, "Peter, I don't want you." Defeated, Peter listens as Gray quietly orders him to get out. Lee stays at the desk for days. She pees in her chair, and everyone encourages her to leave, even her dad, but she refuses to budge. She remains there for days. On the third day, the media arrives and films a documentary about her. That night, Gray eventually returns, hands her a juice, and takes her to his house. He bathes her, washing away her ordeal. Lee narrates that each cut and scar represented a different mood, and she remembered them all. For the first time, she feels beautiful. She says, "I touched the soil, and he loved me back." And they are finally married. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you soon.